So it's not just China, it's China's taking advantage of American greed. And this kind of greed can kill, and it has killed.
It has killed?
Absolutely. And China RX opens up with a story of a Johns Hopkins trained physician, and he was out in Arizona, had a great practice as a radiologist, and he knew he had a stomach ulcer. He self-diagnosed correctly, and it was getting painful. So late one night, he and his wife and kids, they stopped in at the Mayo Clinic in Scottsdale emergency room, and they said, "Why don't you stay overnight? Your wife and children go home and pick you up tomorrow morning. We'll just do a test, scope the inside to see what's going on, and you'll be on your way." So at 6 the next morning, he got a blood thinner and another dose at about 10 in the morning. Healthy guy, 45 years old, and by 10:30, he was showing signs of having a heart attack. No history of heart disease. So they put him in the cath lab, and they gave him more of this blood thinner. And he went into, very quickly, multiple organ failure. And this is all documented. They spent months and months and months finding a case, because this is like the perfect crime. It's really hard to find, to show cause and effect. And the following week, his heart was so damaged, they just took it out of his body. He was put on an artificial heart machine. The next month, he's sitting up in bed in the hospital with his wife next to him, watching the evening news, tethered to this artificial heart machine. And on the news, it's been reported that contaminated heparin, a blood thinner, was found in St. Louis hospitals. And he turned to his wife and said, "Oh my God, I got a lot of heparin. Was it contaminated?" Long story short, 3 months later, he died after a failed Hail Mary transplant. And it was a horrific death. And the FDA traced this contaminant back to China, where for economic reasons, they put in a fake substitute for the real thing. And at high levels, this was lethal. And there were hundreds of people who died, and we don't even know the full numbers, because it's so hard to tell if you're chronically ill and, was the drug, what is it? It's very, very hard to tell. So that was 2007 and 8. And, decade later, what did we get? Contaminated blood pressure medicine that millions of Americans were taking. And this had a rocket fuel compound in it.
Rocket fuel.
And I was giving testimony to the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission, and a member of the commission, retired military, a very fine gentleman, Army colonel, he spoke up extemporaneously. This was not his testimony. He says, "Yeah, I got blood pressure medicine from China and it had rocket fuel in it." He said, "If I'm getting it as retired military, that means our active duty people are getting it too." And it was sourced in China. This is how bad it's gotten. It's shocking.
You make a very good point in the book that, so this is being done because on the surface, it's cheaper to buy from China. But really, we can't afford to do this.
It's insanity. If you want to buy a cheap T-shirt, go right ahead. And we can go find the cheapest T-shirt somewhere, but you're going to do that with the medicines that you depend on for your life? There was just an article published in a really reputable medical journal about a medicine given to people after heart and lung transplants. And doctors had it tested at Harvard, and it turns out it wasn't dissolving properly in the body. So that means if you're taking a medicine that's supposed to last 6 hours or 8 hours, and if it doesn't dissolve evenly, that means the last couple of hours, you're not getting protection. And this is an immunosuppressant, which you really need if you're getting a new organ in your body.
In other words, your organ could fail because of the Chinese poor quality medicine. I think
Right.
what's crazy to me about what you're bringing up is that the case of the heart thinner that you brought up was about the same time as the melamine milk scandal in China. That was 2008. And I remember thinking at the time, I'm never going to buy food from China if I can ever avoid it, because you never know. But because of the way that our healthcare system works, the consumers are very rarely making choices about what they buy or how much they spend on what they buy, because you've got these middlemen, right? The insurance companies, and often other middlemen as well.
Yeah, most Americans
So-
have no idea they're getting these Chinese-made drugs.
Right. And you're buying it from like, your trusted, Walgreens or CVS, and you think like, oh, well, like surely they're not going to sell me bad medicine because they'd get sued. So I trust them. But it's not that simple, because even they're not necessarily liable for it because they're getting it from someone else who's then sourcing it from China. And so you have these complexities of the supply chain. But I think the core of it, Rosemary, is that the individual consumers have no way to make a choice because they don't have any way to understand the supply chain for an individual thing that they're taking.
That's exactly right. We don't see the box that it comes in, even when we go to a retail pharmacy, and we're certainly not going to see where stuff comes from if we're in the hospital. It's the last thing we'll be thinking of. But in the last couple of weeks, I've been given some thought to this. I called up a very well-known retail pharmacy chain, and they sell this Chinese generic blood pressure medicine that didn't control this person's blood pressure and put her in dangerous, life-threatening territory. Just think about this. Imagine if you're going to buy tires, and I'll just use the example of Costco or any other one. Imagine if Costco, they're not doing this. Imagine if Costco were buying tires from China. And let's say that these manufacturing plants are supposed to be inspected by the federal government, the places making these tires, and let's say they got a warning letter, or we know that there's problems, that they're not very well regulated, and that these tires could blow out on the highway when you're going 65 miles an hour. The American public would still hold Costco accountable for selling defective tires. And as a pharmacy, the whole industry all these special interests know that FDA doesn't test these drugs before they're being sold. And for the past year, the FDA has done hardly any inspections in China and elsewhere because of COVID. So we are effectively importing unregulated product. So there's I think that sense of, well, how should these retail stores know? I'll tell you, they should know. They should absolutely know. And I think it's only going to get worse, regrettably. But sometimes things have to get bad until they get fixed. And I think it's going to hit the fan someday. And if you're a retail pharmacy and you're selling product to the American people that is defective and results in harm, then they are not immune to liability.